Welcome to Sunday Satsang. I love you all. As Robert said, you're all my spiritual family. I think today's talk will be very different. I speak all the time about gurus who don't speak about their own processes or themselves or their past, but always talk in elevated terms, like I am Brahma, consciousness itself, the supreme, the absolute, sort of denying the humanity in themselves or their role as a human being within the role of their being a teacher. But I found out that spiritual progress is quite slow until all of the human problems that you have. Karima, you going to sit down?
Yes, I am.
We have a latecomer that just wants to interrupt our satsang, who is too lazy to get up 10 minutes early and is now disrupting the flow totally. Oh my God, now she wants water. Karima, can you go in the other room?
You want me to go in the other room?
Yeah.
I can't hear you.
Take your computer and go in the other room. Good, she's upset with me and going back into the bedroom. Now that sort of threw me off the loop. But what I wanted to say was, there isn't much spiritual advancement without solving the personal problems in your life. The problems from childhood regarding love, the problems of paranoia, the problems of fear, of anger, each of these things hold us back from reaching God, from reaching emptiness, from realizing the absolute witness. I've known that the healing process involved in me being human continues. It's never been fully resolved. Most of us have problems from early life, like not feeling recognized, not feeling seen, not feeling understood, not feeling loved, or else a kind of pervasive fear of something going wrong and destroying us. You can't get away from being human and dealing with the problems of humanhood. Those have to be resolved. And you don't have to resolve them all before advancing on, but they have to be resolved as they become clear in your consciousness. For me now, I feel that all the personal problems in my life of being human have been resolved. The last one of being lovable or loved, which I put such an emphasis on in my teachings, because I find most people have that as a problem of feeling loved or feeling able to love. Therefore, I talk about the need for human love all the time, because it's a calling to all of you that feel that lack, the need to be loved, accepted, recognized, revered, even worshipped, like a child should feel, like is happening with them, with their parents. If they're not, they wander through life feeling unlovable, unnoticed, unaccepted, unloved. In their whole life is then a search, and they know not for what. The search takes on different clothes and becomes a search for the spiritual, for emptiness, for a deliverance from their desires, and to become nothing, to escape from that emotion that drives them to seek another. Do you feel driven to seek love? Do you feel driven to feel love? Do you feel driven to feel loved? Do you feel driven to love someone? Or has that been satisfied in you and you have other problems? Like an overriding fear of existence. That existence itself is threatened by the world. I'll tell you a little bit about me. Growing up, I was one of the most miserable, lonely kids imaginable. At age 11, I was contemplating suicide because I felt no love. My father was never around. He worked during the day and supposedly hung out at the airport at night with his pals flying airplanes, when in fact he was carousing, playing around, but also going to the airport. He was very severe, cold, withdrawn, extremely critical. I was an intellectual kid. I thought I was playing normally, but he saw me as different and strange. He would berate me. Instead of calling me Eddie, he'd call me Betty or Pimple Face, hurting me deeply all the time. That I wasn't a man's man, I guess. That I wasn't stiff and emotionless as he tried to be. My mother was similarly affected by his coldness and withdrawnness. And she became desperately unhappy and depressed. She would spend her days lying in bed, depressed, and not noticing us, her two children, Ron and myself, a younger brother. And often we'd lie on the bed too, feeling a similar depression, hurt, and a kind of anger because we weren't cherished and loved like kids need to be in order to feel complete, recognized, and whole. Then my father died when I was 14. After that, I had an additional problem, which was fear. The fear of death. I felt it all around me. When I went in the woods and go camping in the woods or walking in the woods, I was careful not to get too extreme of an exercise for fear of having a heart attack and dying, like he had died of a heart attack. I began feeling an all-pervasive underlying fear, always in the form of something is going to go wrong and something catastrophic is going to happen. That went on for years. It drove me to start buying guns in the 1970s because I saw a woman being kidnapped off the street outside my house by two cars of black men. And there's a crowd of people out there who did nothing while they held her down, pinned her down, and then carried her to one of the cars. I felt that kind of thing should never happen again. I would not allow it. So I bought a gun, then two guns, then three guns. Later on, I became a bodyguard while I was in college, part-time in the evenings, carrying a gun again, protecting celebrities from would-be kidnappers or robbers or whoever. Eventually, though, and I don't know when, that fear of death, that fear of having everything taken away from me, including my life, my possessions, dropped away. I think it was sometime after my awakening with Robert, my shower experience where I became total emptiness with no person inside. After that, I was just emptiness for many years until Janet came along. And I fell deeply in love, and she was deeply in love with me. And she'd say she loved me in such a passionate way. With the way she moved her face, I could see it in her eyes, the love. And I would hear it in her voice. It wasn't just, I love you. It was much more passionate. You could hear it in her voice. Even on the phone, I could feel it because of her voice, the way she said, I love you. Not like I just said it, but in her own way. And after hearing it maybe hundreds and hundreds of times, one day when she was talking to me on the phone, I really heard it. I really heard it, and something reset inside of me. It changed because I felt someone I love really, really loves me. And I let it in. I let her love in. I let it touch the deepest part of me. I was no longer defended against it. And I was healed of that. Not that I was healed of the need for love, because after she left, I continued to search for that through Dia, where I felt other kinds of changes. An increase in my ability to feel the energies, Shakti, to be its voice, and to feel the power of God in me. The latest change has happened since we've been separated. Which is to begin to feel the ending of all my quests for humanhood. I mean, I still fear death, I assume to a certain extent, but not like 30 years ago. I mean, now I fear it as just the loss of this precious existence in this body. Because this is the only one for me as an embedded human being. Ed Musica is never coming back after I die. It'll be another form with the same life force inside, the same God, but different circumstances. So the human personality that forms will be different than I am or was. I'm the one and only Ed Musica, just like you were the one and only Angela, and Rolf, and Jay, and VJ, and Maxie. I no longer have mountains to be conquered. I no longer have, or I can perceive, wounds to be healed. I no longer have that desperate need for love. I no longer have a desperate need to teach. I teach now because I love it. My lovers are you, all of you. Bata, Mark, VJ, Vesselina, Jay, Rolf, Stevie, Maxie, Angela, Michael, Spencer, Mohammed, Sukai, Tove, Ruslan. It's like there's a need for personal love with all of you. But it no longer has to be satisfied by being physically together. I've given up on the need for an ashram where we could all be together and share a spiritual life together. I find it satisfying just to be able to love you at a distance and share love at a distance. That's good enough. That's come to rest in me. The need to have you physically around. Because my situation, our house can support even less guests than when we were living in Sun City a few miles away, where we had a larger house. I have another house across the street that could be for students, but there's a renter there right now, and there'd have to be a really severe commitment by people who wanted to come here to be close, which I would love. But it hasn't happened. It doesn't look like it will happen. So I've accepted that I'm a video presence only guru. And you are my video students. Later on in life, I still continue to practice mindfulness, although not so much formal sitting anymore. And when I was with Robert, I had the experience of becoming nothingness. And really, it's becoming empty because the experience of nothingness is quite different. Becoming one with the void, with emptiness, is an opening experience like no other, because you don't exist anymore. There's only the world around and inside, which becomes one. And there's no person within that one. The person, the I, is seen to be just a concept with no object attached, no subject. And that brings a kind of freedom, but also a kind of isolation and emptiness. You're no longer a human. You're emptiness. And then you learn to distinguish between emptiness and nothingness. Emptiness is what you wake up to in the morning, which then becomes the world and you as a person. And at night, nothingness absorbs you. Nothingness absorbs even the emptiness. There's no awareness. There's no consciousness. Yeah, I know people say you're conscious all night long, but that's only in the morning that you remember you are conscious in nothingness. That way you remember nothingness, but you're not in nothingness anymore. And for 15 years, I was there until Janet came and brought me back to life and fixed that last really deep wound in me of feeling unloved and unlovable. She was the beginning of the end of my spiritual journey. And I see how many people suffer from that, problems of love. The lover they're with, the wife they're with, the husband they're with. They're together as sister and brother almost. And the depth of the love is no longer there. They're there because it's comfortable, it's family. But that extremely intense love that happens so rarely, where you meet your soulmate or what feels like it, turns out to be a kind of spiritual necessity. It's a rite of passage where you ran into the right person at the right moment for that itch to be scratched. And then is no more. Then you move on to the next experience you have to have for your own unfolding. And it's arranged by God in any specific order, or the universe arranges itself to give you lessons. Because if you don't find the right opportunity, that itch will never be healed. And any enlightenment you have will be tempered by that unhealed itch in you, which will continue to hold with you afterwards. And that will determine how your teachings are different from other person's teachings, by the hidden itch you still have. What I offer you is acceptance and love. I teach you to fall in love. Become enamored of love. I think Robert's teaching that there is no world, or the world is illusory. You have no body, or whatever, no separate self. All of these things are the worst possible teachings for most of us who need a cure of the heart, not a disappearing of the heart. People like Robert ran away from the heart and found peace in separation. I found peace in embracing the needs of my heart. because they were the needs of me as a human being on a spiritual journey. So you have to find out in you, can you recognize what particular need you're working on now in your spiritual journey? Is it a need for recognition? Is it a need for control? Is it a need for emptiness to take you out of suffering and fear, like Buddhism? Or is it a need to fully perceive and feel your body, to become alive in your body, feeling the energies of your body, and the God enfolded within those energies? That is the source of those energies, but is not itself the energies. And I'm talking about what I call the life force. I can use energies, but energies are not it. It's like energies are the voice of the life force, the way he tickles you and touches you. The life force is something very different. It's like finding yourself as you really are for the first time at the deepest level. I can't give the word God to it because God is so horribly misused. To say it's God is meaningless, because who's God? What God? What God at what time? What theology? I can't even really say it's spirit, because it seems more powerful than spirit to me. And in one way, it feels very different from me, separate and very powerful. And yet at the same time, it feels exactly like me. So what words to use? Something that feels like me and at the same time feels like other, more powerful. So I give it the term life force. And I can't think of a better term. I could call it Beelzebub or Chumanchu or any other name. But it wouldn't pass on the feeling I have of it to you. But I'll try to tell you what it's like. If you're really very quiet, really, really quiet, your body is very quiet, and your attention is turned inside of you. You feel an emptiness. And at first or at long time, that emptiness is just empty. It's like being in the void of outer space. There's nothing warm or comforting in it at all. There's no energies, no sense of presence. It's just a vacuum with no end. It's kind of a dry place where your heart can die from the dryness. But after your heart is broken open by a big enough love and devotion and surrender, that empty space is filled with a fullness of energy and of presence. You're never alone anymore. The eye of God is in you. The love of God is in you. The power of God is within you and is you. And how does it feel? It feels inside of me like an emptiness that's filled with bright light, extremely intense light. That for me now has many different patterns, but they're all geometric patterns. From the top of my legs to the top of my head, various geometric patterns of light that keep changing. There's a very subtle and yet intense movement of energies throughout my body. That's too subtle to be called ecstasy or even bliss, but a very high frequency feeling of the energies within me. And then behind that, underneath that, is a deep pool of love and light with the energies resting on top of it. And I can feel myself sinking into that pool, finding complete rest. I rest in my own power and my light. My own form is emptiness and light and very, very subtle bliss. A sense of being alive, a sense of happiness and joy. That's not the kind you go running down the street screaming, I am alive, like I originally did. But one that's accepted the fact that I am alive. And this life form will come to an end. But in the meantime, feeling every current within, enjoying the processes within, really not paying much attention to the world anymore. I have no interest in the world, no interest in traveling, no interest in finding new restaurants to eat in, no interest in talking to other teachers. No interest in fame. No interest in a large sangha. Because I've accepted everything as it is. It's all right as is, including the fact that we're not seeing each other face to face, eye to eye, nose to nose. I can't smell you. I can't touch your skin. All that I can do is touch your heart with my words. That's all I'm able to do. And say, I love you. Each and every one of you. Like my family member. And I watch you. I watch over you. I'm concerned with your existence as well as your spiritual development. I love you all. I love you all. I love you all.